Hello, everyone. My name is Arjun Rena, and I'm here in Gurgaon. Times are really tough. Death very close by, with neighbors now dying of COVID. Thank you for inviting me to this conference. I would like to begin with a personal historical perspective, giving you details of my ancestor, the president of the Punjab Hindu Mahasabha, who was one of the three members representing the Hindus of India in the Second Roundtable Conference, 1931, in London. I'm starting with his story to illustrate the multiple identities within the Hindu identity. Just to list out the composition of the conference, there were members representing the Government of India, Indian National Congress, Muslims, Hindus, liberals, the Justice Party, depressed classes with Ambedkar there, Sikhs, Parsis, Indian Christians, Europeans, Anglo Indians, women, landlords, industry, labor, universities, Burma, and Sindh. While this long list may reflect the divide and rule policy, creating a spectrum of conflicting vested interests sitting there at the table before the colonial master, it sets up a contrast to the majority presence of Hindus in the Indian political scene today, with the aggressive aspects being reflected in the ideology of Hindutva. My Purvaj Narendranath studied in 1890 in a madarsa, Muslim religious school, in the Wazir Khan Mosque of Lahore, and was later referred to by his Muslim friends and community as Hafiz, one who has memorized by heart the Quran. Later, he went on to do a master's in English and translated into Urdu and Persian John Stuart Mill's Liberty at the age of 19. Worried about their ward's proclivity, as a young orphan of 9, he and his estate were taken under the custody of the British Court of Wards. Towards ideas like liberty and freedom, the colonial administration took the young man under their wing, gave him a job in the ICS, the Colonial Administrative Service. As stated earlier, he was one of the first presidents of the Punjab Hindu Mahasabha that later grew into the All India Hindu Mahasabha. In the 30s, on a request by Ambedkar, who wanted to convert a number of Dalits to Sikhism, he gave a letter signed personally in support of such an endeavor to uplift the oppressed classes through conversion to Sikhism. However, later, when Ambedkar wanted to give his more radical speech titled An Annihilation of Caste, he was one of the 4 Hindu leaders that wrote to stop him from coming to Lahore. He was radical, but not radical enough. The story of his death and funeral has his Muslim friends and followers wanting to bury him and his Hindu community cremate. While a part of me doubts the Sufi saint Kabir-like myth-making, what is true is that he was the judgeman, overlord of 1,600 Muslim tenants, a continuity of over 100 years or more from the Sikh Empire through to colonial rule. And perhaps his Hafiz status brought him some protection and dignity in what must have been otherwise for both parties, but especially the latter, a difficult relationship between the president of the Punjab Hindu Mahasabha and his Muslim tenants. For brevity of time, I move the story from this historic portrait through the partition of British India in 1947, when my family moved to India, all the way through to 2010, when I migrated to Australia. To introduce my personal story, I begin with some poetry written in Persian by my Nani's brother, a poet, a friend of Muhammad Iqbal, Chand Narayan Rena. It goes, Zaat meri Kashmiri Pandit, हक ने बख्शी मुझे फजीलत, जहन रसा और ज़की तबीयत, उस पे तुर्रा गोरी रंगत. By caste, I am a Kashmiri Pandit. Nature has given me great abilities, a temperament and a spirit to rule, and to top it all, my white skin. On reflection, the complication of a Hindu identity is the caste identity that forefronts it, as my Pandit status here does. My spending the last 35 years learning and performing Kathakali was an attempt to enrich my being with the practice and knowledge of another caste, the Nayars of Kerala, a warrior caste like the Kshatriyas of the north. When my father first saw me dancing Kathakali, he was very disturbed by the amount of labor I needed to do with my body. He suggested I take up instead Kudiyatam, where the Chakyar or Nambudri temple servant chants text more than warring with his body. I'm an actor, dancer, and storyteller working primarily solo. My play A Terrible Beauty is Born work to bring attention to the condition of call center workers in Gurgaon, India. My play A Colonial, the Convict, and the Cockatoo is an Indian migrant's critical view of Australian history. In Hawking the Bard in the Heart of Darkness, I chronicle 19th century Indian migration to Australia in the conditions of the White Australia policy. My play, The Magic Hour, a messy mix of Shakespeare and Kathakali, which has as its presiding deity Krishna, begins with the Azan, the Islamic call to prayer. I began starting my show with the Azan after the Gujarat riots as a reminder of that terrible event. Whenever anyone talks of the Gujarat riots, the political counterposed is what about the anti Sikh riots of 1984? While the differing politics of the ruling BJP and Congress is significant in itself, what is relevant to this conference is what I believe is common to both: the Hindu male's sense of fear of the other. In the present instance of the Sikh and the Musalman, in 1984 it was the Sikh who needed to be put in place. In 2002, it was the Musalman. I will now elaborate an important difference between a sense of self and a sense of other within the Hindu being. I believe Hinduism offers deep insight into the nature of self, insights that are mystical and magical and healing and powerful. It is in the sense of the other that things get more complicated. Very briefly, the knowledge of texts and practices that make up the ecosystem of the Hindu self come from the pastoral and forest dwelling and earlier settler agricultural populations. The Veds, the Purans, the Upanishads, the practice of meditation, yoga, tantra, all contain the wisdom of the pre agricultural world. Even in Kathakali, you see a strong trace of the being of a hunter warrior present. All our practices, including reconstructed dance forms like Odissi, are about the individual body working to link itself to greater forces of nature, of the universe. Not shying away from the mystical, I support ideas of joy and bliss, anand and ras, that come from such a connection of the self with the greater self. These, I believe, are early Hinduism's offerings to what might refer here as the private being. It is through the settling, socializing process of the agricultural civilization that the demonization of the other gets embedded into the social being. In every story, a demon or Rakshas appears. You can imagine agricultural villages huddled together, fearing the darkness beyond, fearing the tribal demons of the forest. In Kathakali, every performance ends with the killing of a demon as a sacrificial offering to the holy fire of performance. The Mahabharata has the demonic other within the family, the core of cousins, and the Ramayana has the demon without, the king of Lanka. This othering and demonization gets further enhanced over the centuries with the formalizing of the caste structure of the social order, with the other becoming a perpetual site for contempt. In defending the great wisdom of Hindu texts and the great beauty of its embodied practices, we cannot not deal with the embedded fear and demonization of the other. This is the historic challenge we are faced with, to resist the Godse principle, who wanted the Hindu state to be hard towards the enemy, or instead to embrace an older form of gentleness within the private and the public self. To be ourselves, to be a sovereign, independent people, we don't need to demonize and other the Christian, the Muslim, the Parsi, and the Sikh. It is important then to recognize in the Hindu self the ancient fear of the demonic other, especially in these conditions of globalization, when you, the Hindu male, will be thrown into all kinds of other worlds. It is important to embrace the other within yourself and not fear and demonize the other. These philosophical musings are, of course, almost ridiculous in contrast to the terrible reality India is facing even as I speak. That there has been criminal neglect at the highest levels of power, there is no doubt. Those in power today must be made accountable once the dust settles. I live close to the Delhi airport. Last night, the planes were relentless with the sound, the sky was relentless with the sound of planes arriving. They were bringing American help, I imagine, PPE kits, oxygen compressors, and other much needed but petty aid. All this while 20,000 crores is being spent on decolonizing the facade of Indian power and giving it a hard Hindu look. We must resist and fight this hardness at all costs. In the meantime, be kind, be gentle, and be safe.